Thank you very much, Chris. Good evening, everybody. My name is Raj Ratan. I am Head of Relationship Management for Julius Baer in London, and on behalf of our entire team, a warm welcome to the Conduit Club. This club, for those that are unfamiliar with it, is a members club which really focuses on creating positive and sustainable change in the world that we live in. And we've now partnered with the Conduit Club for 3 years, and we partner with them because so many of our values align. At Julius Baer, we are guided by the belief that how we invest today really determines how we live tomorrow. And it's through that lens that we really talk to a number of our clients about purpose, values, and legacy. And events like today help us to do just that. We've had some phenomenal speakers and thought leaders come to this venue and talk over the years, and today's no different. We are in for an absolute treat, as we're about to hear from two of the world's most iconic ocean photographers, Paul Nicklen and Cristina Mittermeier. Paul started off his career as a marine biologist and then went on to become one of the most famous, one of the most renowned and highly regarded conservation photographers in the world. He has won a number of awards and accolades. He's been published in National Geographic 16 times. You said not to embarrass you, but he's been published in National...
Canadian. He's up on the accolades. Just go, but thank you.
16 times in National Geographic, 20 international awards, BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year in 2012, and in 2019 you were the youngest ever person to be inducted into the International Photography Hall of Fame. Cristina was really one of the pioneers of conservation photography and went on to found the International League of Conservation Photographers. She won the Smithsonian Award for Wildlife Photography, and she was actually noted as one of the top 50 keynote speakers in the world and recently spoke at the World Economic Forum. Paul and Cristina went on to found Sea Legacy in 2014, which is a non-profit organization which really focuses on protecting and rewilding our oceans. So it's fair to say that your work continues to educate and inspire millions of people today. They are in dialogue today with Colin Butfield. Colin is the founder of Silverback Productions and Open Planet. And just to pick up a couple of topical and recent themes, Colin has been a lifelong collaborator with Sir David Attenborough.
Not his life. That would make me 99.
You look good for it, though, I got to say.
Sorry, Ron.
I'll do the gags. He co-authored Oceans, Earth, Stars, Wilderness with Sir David Attenborough, and also co-directed Ocean the Movie, which was released last week. So we are fortunate to have them here with us today to talk about some of their work, some of their insights and experiences, but also some of your concerns and some of your hopes for our oceans. With that, let me hand over to Colin, Cristina, and Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj, for that beautiful introduction. And I mean, this is a real treat for me because I'm really big fans of both of these guys. If you don't believe me, they kindly donated photographs to the book that David and I wrote, and I was over the moon to be able to feature them. But also because although I have worked on the recent feature film Ocean, which comes out, which is full of gorgeous photography, the truth of the matter is I never once took a single shot in that. I'm a director, I'm a writer. The real skill... Look at that plug. Thank you very much. I didn't paint that cover either. But what I have seen firsthand is the unbelievable skill it takes to be able to do underwater photography to the standard that both of them do it at. I mean, it is an incredibly difficult task. It takes ridiculous guts. It takes poise. It takes thought. It takes positioning. It takes endless planning. And only when you see it close up do you really get to understand that. So I wonder if possibly you could share with us a little bit of the craft, the difficulty, how that starts. Maybe Paul will start with you and then go to Cristina, just what it takes to get this art that you get.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, especially to Julius Baer and our team is here tonight. Lauren Johnson, Erica Hilton. We're very grateful to be able to have a show here at Photo London and to be able to, have an excuse to come over and say hi to everyone here tonight. And I know you guys are having great chats about sustainability, and we're very proud to be a part of it. And yeah, I think, the hardest part, what we do is in our industry, we say F8 and be there. And anybody can sort of look at a picture of ours and say, well, I could take that. And you're right, you could take that. But it's quite often being there. I remember one image I won with BBC at was an aerial picture of narwhals. And it's really not that great of a shot. It's just an aerial of narwhals inside an ice
It's
wall.
absolutely gorgeous.
But I'm just proud it's in your book, and but it took me 5 years of planning to get that image. I went there 3 years in a row. I grew up with the Inuit up in Baffin Island. I was one of 3 non-Inuit families. We moved there when I was a kid, so I got the one skill I have better than I think any other photographer in the world is I'm really good at being frozen and miserable, just because I grew up with the Inuit, and so to be up there sort of cold, living in a tent. We were living on raw seal meat because that's what the Inuit had around, and then finally for this moment to come together, and I crashed the airplane twice. We blew up the engine because of carb icing, had another crash landing, ordered another engine, installed it in the airplane. It was on the last day of the project when all the hunters had been ordered off the ice. We were ordered off the ice, but we refused. We stayed out there. The ice was an inch thick, and we finally got up in the air in the airplane after 5 years of trying, and we trying to get these moments. We saw BBC come and go. They had big budgets, big teams, but they didn't have. My whole thing is just put time in the field. And then finally on the last day, we got these shots where we started to see hundreds and then thousands of narwhals, and we're flying around in this airplane with the doors off. And we landed to refuel the airplane, and we were just spinning because it was all happening. It finally was coming together, and I fell through the sea ice. And I did the same thing. I laughed because I always fall through the ice. But in this case, the ice was rolling, big chunks of ice on this thin ice, and I wasn't going to come back. And luckily I reached up and grabbed my sled. We had a rope dangling, and it dislocated my shoulder, and I'm lying in this icy water with a dislocated shoulder. And they pulled me out of the hunter. One hunter was left. He pulled me out of the water. My assistant took him 2 hours to reset my shoulder. I'm now getting a shoulder replacement in a couple of weeks because of it 20 years later. But sort of that's what goes into a lot of these images is just really pushing through the pain, the trauma, the frustration, the failure. I say we fail 98% of the time. If you fail 100% of the time, you're out of work. And your camera operators on your beautiful Film Ocean probably failed 98% of the time too. And it's a real testament to how gifted these cinematographers are to come back with stuff like that. So yeah.
Exactly, and it takes extraordinary bravery, as you've detailed there. But it also, Cristina, takes a real understanding of the marine environment and the creatures that are within it. There's a tradecraft, but there's also a real understanding of how the ocean works and what lives there.
Yeah, I think this is a career that's motivated by great love and the desire to understand and share that, but also stupidity. As a woman, I wanted to be an underwater photographer, but I understood that the barriers to entry are massive. Not only is it dangerous, it's also very expensive and difficult to get into it. But when I started going out with Paul and I was given the opportunity, then you're sitting on the little dinghy and the big seas and you're buckling and it's -2 degrees, the water's frozen, and he goes in and I'm like, oh, he assumes I know what I'm doing. No choice, you have to go in too. And the first few times is terrifying, and you really are confronted with the fact that you know so little about the ocean and how massively powerful it is and how tiny and fragile your life is in the ocean. And then you start learning and overcoming and understanding. And the more you know, the more terrified you become. And, it just becomes this lifelong pursuit of telling the story of what Sir David calls the most important ecosystem on planet Earth. And we're driven by that.
And when you're being driven by that, obviously you get to encounter, both of you, but you first, Cristina, you get to encounter the most incredible wildlife. Just one look through your images, there's a few, don't get too distracted, but there's some lovely ones rolling over there and on the screens. How do you manage to, in the awe of what you're seeing, sometimes fear of the situation, but often not fear of the wildlife, but the fear of what you're seeing, how do you take that pause to compose the image so perfectly? How do you balance that? Because that's hard enough to do, in the Surrey Hills on a day. To do it in the sort of conditions you're in, how do you keep a presence of mind?
Well, there's a couple of things. Of course, on land, you have endless air to breathe, and you can spend as much time as you need. But when you're underwater, you either have a scuba tank, or we do rebreather diving, which is very complex.
Maybe say a little bit about rebreathers and how that helps you get the shot.
Yeah, Paul can explain rebreathers better. It's a technology that was invented by the military so that the divers would not be detected through their bubbles. So what you're doing is you're basically rebreathing your own breath. So you know that you exhale carbon dioxide, so you need a mechanism to absorb it. So you have a tank that's absorbing the CO2, but you also need to inject oxygen. So you have a computer that tells you how much oxygen you need to re-inject.
The only problem with this, it's incredible technology and it's getting way better, but if you don't have enough oxygen, you fall asleep and you die underwater, you drown. And if you get too much oxygen, you go into seizures and you drown and die underwater. So it's great, and we have lost quite a few friends to this technology, but it is improving. But like Roger Horrocks and Roger Munns, great British cinematographers use the same systems we use, and it's getting much safer. But it allows you to be underwater for up to 5 hours.
Which is incredible, the ability to be able to take the shots, but also from a director's point of view, you get rid of all the bubbles in the shot. So it gives you much greater range. It sometimes stops some of that disturbance.
Well, bubbles underwater are generally a threat display. When orcas come up to you and blow bubbles in your face, it's a threat display. It doesn't feel very comfortable. But to be able to be there not blowing bubbles, because you're trying to get close to these animals and you're trying to get close and you're saying threat display. So it just is counter.
And you run out of air so quickly on scuba. Yeah. So rebreathers allow you to be underwater a lot longer, but you're also invisible to the people on the boat up top. So you can easily get lost at sea. And if there's anything wrong, you really are on there to your own devices. But it teaches you something really important. Life on Earth is only possible because we have oxygen produced by nature, and we have the mechanisms to absorb CO2, also a gift of nature. And you learn what happens when you get out of gas. So that's why we need to keep the ocean alive. But in terms of what it takes to get in the water and understand all of these gases and all of these computers, and think about the current, and think about the animals around you, and then compose a shot. And then think about the light, and then remember the gases again. Yeah. And then look, it's just so much happening all the time that you really need to be zen. And I think we both have learned how to be very meditative underwater while keeping your wits about you all the time.
I actually use a rule for myself that I created to allow myself to push my own limits creatively. Like Christina's saying, you have to have your left brain, which is the math, the gas, managing the safety. This ice sheet is moving over my head. My diving hole is closing up. I only have 20 minutes, before it closes up completely. So your whole left brain is doing all that. And then your right brain, to just shoot really powerful imagery, you need to be lost in the creative process. And it's tough when, things are trying to kill you or whatever. And then so I have something called the 20-60-20 rule, where 20% of the time, the first 20% is just to come back with something, something you can edit into your film, or something that we can use for conservation, or that National Geographic can publish in the magazine. And you get that fairly quickly. And then once your systems are working, the rebreather's working, everything's functioning, then you say, okay, I'm going to switch into the 60% quadrant, which is where I'll spend my majority of my time, which is where I'm really using my skill set of an artist that it's like being a mechanic. You have these skill set that you built, these tools over your career, where you've tried things and they've worked, and really where you're pushing your own creative boundaries to come back with something powerful. Because if your work is not creative and powerful, that's going to grab people by the heart or punch them in the face or just get their attention, a holy wow moment, then what are you doing now? Then you're just shooting mediocrity. So I know that we're going to do our best work when we're in that second 60%. And then once you've exhausted that, the light is awful, things aren't working out anymore, so you still keep shooting, and you get into that last 20% of what the hell, let's just try this. And you likely are going to fail at getting something powerful, but you're at least expanding your own personal skill set as an artist. So that's where you're really trying to balance the left brain survival and the right brain creativity.
And every once in a while it works like magic and you come back with something amazing.
But most of the time we fail.
But that's the thing. I remember saw one of my heroes in wildlife filmmaking, who I ended up having the pleasure of working with, a guy called Alistair Fothergill, who made many series, amongst them Blue Planet, Planet Earth. And he described his job as failure management, which is just playing the odds enough to be able, it's downplaying his enormous skill, but the idea of fail, and just the right amount of time that you get enough success to blow things apart. But what I've also seen firsthand in the kind of work that you both do is how much planning goes into deciding where to go, what to go for, what season to go for it. I just wonder how you make your personal, whether that's artistic or conservation-related decisions about what to go for and when. You've got a finite amount of time. How do you pick it?
I'll say that the first huge advantage that we have working for us is that we're a couple. And so wherever he is, that's where home is. So I have children, but they're grown now. So it's easy to leave for many, many months and be on a boat for as long as it's needed. So that element is not complicated anymore. But the second part is just being an awesome expedition leader. And Paul and I are very good yin and yang because I tend to think about the conservation outcomes. I tend to be the one playing the chess game of, who are our partners, who are the funders, what are the government, people that we need to be talking about while he plans these expeditions. And I'm not going to try to, flatter you too much, but he's one of the best expedition leaders I've ever seen in my entire career. Because
Just told us he crushed like 3 planes in a
Yeah,
row.
I'm terrible,
but
but
he puts
thanks,
us where we
darling.
need to be at the right time, and we always end up being in the right spot to take the shot.
Well, that's, to what Christina's saying. I mean, I'm willing to suffer, fail, dislocate my shoulder, whatever, because Cristina gives purpose, and I've never seen anybody walk into a room and know everybody who's got something going on important in the ocean conservation space. So all that risk and challenge is not going to be wasted. If it was just going to go into a server and sit in a void, it wouldn't feel very good. But like, I'm cold, I'm miserable, I feel awful, I feel sick, but I'm going to go do one more dive because I know if we get the shot, it's going to have purpose. I mean, for filmmakers and photographers, once you shoot something epic, and for most photographers, once they get a great image, their work is done. They're happy, they pat themselves on the back, they show it to a couple of their friends, or maybe it goes on Instagram. But if you shoot something so iconic and special and powerful, that image is now going to go to work for the next 100 years or 1,000 years in giving a voice and be in service to the ocean, to our planet, to ecosystems. And that's what, that picture of the narwhals I took 20 years ago. Now to see it in your book and the footage we have going in important films, it's like, and that's the shot right there on the screen. It really just means a lot when that work goes on to live forever, and that's why we keep pushing.
And of course, in doing that, you're documenting things that may be getting worse or maybe getting better or maybe changing. And I'm wondering, Cristina, with the conservation head-on that you have, how do you pick the species or locations that you think have the best chance of cutting through? What is it that inspires you? Is it a piece of science you've read or something you've heard? What makes you go for a certain subject?
It's so funny, Colin. It's a great question because after so many years of doing it, it just becomes like a second nature. You have to work with a charismatic megafauna or animals that have an interesting story. But the more difficult part of it is, every time you get in the water, you find a creature that you've never seen before, and you're like, what the hell is that? How does it breathe? Anyway, for me, it's being part of this enormous conservation community and understanding that the very small role that that we all play is bringing the story to life. Because if people don't know about it, and trust me, we've been trying to shout for decades about how much trouble we're in, and it's not part of people's daily life. So you try to tell the story with a narrative that is not terrifying, because that will turn people away, and that it has some positive outcome. So I am inspired by Martin Luther King. He didn't start the speech by saying, I have a nightmare. He told us what the dream was, and that's something I love about ocean. It really paints a picture of where is it that we want to go. Aspirational, inviting, it really opens the door for everybody to care and participate. And so those are the stories we're trying to tell. So whether it is from the perspective of a seahorse or a blue whale, you're trying to find a character that invites people into the story. And then you have to make it funny and emotional and relatable and more than anything, beautiful.
Just to quickly add to that, it was through Instagram. I mean, even though I had shot for Nat Geo for many years, when Instagram came out, and I came kicking and screaming like, "Why am I'm not going to get on a device and do this." But we learned quickly as our base grew that in order to really gain the trust of your audience, to communicate with your audience, and I equate it to boxing: jab, 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 punch. And the jabs it has to be beautiful and interesting and powerful and engaging and suck you in, and you gain people's trust and they want to come on this journey with you. We just want, as artists, as conservationists, we want to punch people in the face every day and say, wake up, the oceans are in trouble, our planet's sick, we're losing it all, but you can't do that. You turn people off very quickly. So a lot like your beautiful work with ocean is you have to remind everybody what's at stake. How beautiful is the ocean? How unique and special and raw and undiscovered? And then this is what we're losing. This is what's at stake. These are the issues. And then, really have to, it's a long song and dance to gain the love and the trust.
Takes
and
decades.
Decades to get the trust of your audience. Like Sir David Attenborough, who's, we trust everything that comes out of his mouth. We trust him. He started, frustrating for me. I spent 15 years growing my Instagram, and you started his Instagram, and in 1 hour,
I have to apologize for that.
It's the fastest growing Instagram account in history. It had 7 million followers in 1 day, and he hadn't even really posted anything yet. I mean, that is a person who has gained the trust and the loyalty of his audience.
I love Colin telling us the story. He says, and then Sir David said, "You did what?"
I should. Fine, I'm going to have to confess all this. So, around when we made A Life on Our Planet with David, Instagram was probably just. It wasn't just starting off, but it was just starting to catch fire, and we thought, well, David's actually been at the forefront of broadcasting in different forms forever. Why don't we try doing a different thing on this? And we created, I think it's 12 different short pieces of different formats, and thought, well, that's quite a nice thing to do. And of course, that happened. And then it's like, what, you mean we have to keep doing this? We stopped that. But what you both do is brilliant, because in the course of doing it, you have, I'm sure you've all looked at their accounts, but you get gorgeous image after gorgeous image after interesting image. And what you get is this gradual sense of, as well as the art, you get this sense of the complexity of the ocean, on how the land interacts with the ocean. You start to understand, and I think what you've revealed and what we've learned over the course of the last few decades is the ocean is more complicated, more connected, more full of different forms of life than we ever knew existed. One of the things we've all, I think, explored in our work is how far behind the understanding of life on land, life in the ocean is. There is so much more to discover, and every year more and more gets found out. And that's not just new species, it's why different species are in different places, how they behave, how they interact with each other, and that sort of complexity. And it really comes across in both of your works. And I just wonder if you could share a little bit about how you've got that kind of understanding of how an ocean environment and any individual species interacts with different parts of the ocean, and that complexity.
Absolutely. I had no idea when I went to university, because I studied marine biology as well, but they didn't have like the academia, the science for the sake of science in Mexico, where I grew up. They had more of an applied idea around fisheries and aquaculture. I thought I was going to go to university to swim with dolphins, but I didn't see any dolphins, at least not live ones. I did spend 4 years looking at the ocean through a microscope and spending many, many hours just trying to identify little tiny creatures, larvae, eggs, adults that are microscopic. That was the first time I was like, oh my God, there's this invisible menagerie underwater that I didn't understand at the time, but over time it's become so apparent that we owe the ability of life to sustain, of Earth to sustain life, to those creatures, because they're producing over 50% of the oxygen we breathe, but they're invisible. And they're so vulnerable, they're so tiny, they're so delicate. It reminds me of the illustrations in this beautiful book, and I hope you'll get this book, it's beautiful.
And Jennifer, the artist, has done the most extraordinary drawings.
Just like delicate, made out of...
Thank you.
And
I promised the man, I'm paying him.
Amazing, but what you realize is that as the ocean gets warmer and becomes more acidic, it's not possible for those creatures to build the tiny, very delicate, fragile shells that they need to survive. So I read a terrifying statistic somewhere that says that phytoplankton, which is the vegetable matter floating in the ocean microscopically, we've lost the equivalent of 4 Amazonian rainforests of that. Invisible, nobody's read about it, it hasn't been in the news. To me, that is just terrifying, that we might run out of our rebreather oxygen.
And I think this is one of the things we've discussed together before, but I think one of the things that I think motivates anybody that's trying to communicate the ocean, tell stories about it, is that, the ocean often seems like it's just the same. Uniform blanket of blue stretching out to the horizon, and actually underneath it is all this complexity and all that we all rely on. And I think one of the things that I know we all feel really quite deeply is that some of the destruction that's being done underneath it needs to be shown and needs to be elevated. And I just want to show one clip, and unfortunately, it's not the happiest clip from our film, but one of the things we wanted to show, just to bring to life why, when you've got all this wonder and complexity, some of the things we're doing to it is particularly damaging. I wonder if we could just
You
quickly
should say
play
that this clip has been seen by 40 million people, you were saying?
Yeah, so the film launched last week, but this clip we put online, it's been seen by about 40 million people already. So we tried to show something that's not been seen before. We've got sound to it as well.
When I used to go scallop diving, you would dive down to the seabed and just acclimatize yourself. Things that look like plants down there are animals. And they've been there for millions of years. Slowly but surely, you would see a complete bed of scallops. It's ancient. It can take 100 years to grow. The first time that I dived over an area that a scallop dredger had just been over, it was just heartbreaking. All sorts of animals just smashed to pieces. It was like swimming over the Garden of Eden to a nuclear winter. The community watched from the shore as these boats go up and down, closer and closer, over and over again, just for a few scallops.
Fish, which we shouldn't be eating anyway, but they catch dolphins, whales, sea lions, turtles. They have a 9-to-1 bycatch. So for every pound of targeted species, they're getting 9 pounds of untargeted species that go back into the ocean as waste. And tragically, Rob Stewart, a great Canadian filmmaker, died in a rebreather accident, what we're talking about. And then after he'd been working on this issue, and his dive partner called us and said, "Can you guys, Sea Legacy, our nonprofit, can you get involved in this project we're doing?" We said yes, but we were having a hard time gathering intel of these boats which were moving around kind of illegally and going through the night. And we were actually in Rwanda at Christmas and having a couple drinks, and there was this guy sitting across from us, and he's like, "What do you guys do?" We told him, and I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "Oh, I fly fighter jets out of San Diego." And he goes, "Is there anything I can do to help?" And I said, "Well, we're actually looking for these fishing boats." And he goes, "Yeah, when we're running our night missions in the fighter jets, we'll start looking for these boats." And I thought he was kind of joking. Sure enough, we start getting these texts. He goes, "Is that what the boat looks like? Is that what?" I'm like, "That's it." So we put together this mission out of San Diego, led by sort of the U.S. military. This is pre-Trump. And we went and gathered the intel. And like what Cristina was saying, while we're diving on these nets, as the sun is coming up, the fishermen are trying to catch us in their nets so they can kill us because they know what we're up to. But we're filming these animals dying, and dead animals, bycatch species in these nets. And then, again, we're pushing really hard because I know Christina's going to run with the results. And so what happened?
Well, in that case, I knew that 2 senators in the state of California were introducing a bill to try to stop these nets, and they just didn't have enough public support. So we produced a short little film, put it out on social media. In 2 weeks, we gathered 150,000 signatures. And we had a 13-year-old go and present it to the California legislature with a film, and they were horrified. They had no idea this was happening. So in a matter of weeks, the governor had banned it from the state. It eventually went federal. President Trump vetoed it on his last day in office last time, but they reintroduced it, and now it's banned in federal waters in the United States. But when it comes to bottom trawling, which is what Colin is talking about, it's been going on for decades, and advocates like us, we've been trying to ban it because it is. You can see the scars that these chains cause in the bottom of the ocean from space.
Yeah.
And when I was in university, I was sent as an observer in one of these ships, and I watched what comes up in this net. So we all love eating shrimp, prawns. For every 1 pound of shrimp, there's 10 pounds of other animals that have died and that are tossed back into the ocean, dead, invisible, and the chain just carries on, being dragged on the bottom of the ocean. It's just horrific. And we never got in the water to do it, but thank you for doing it, Colin. Please give him a round of applause for directing this shot. Because we were all like, woohoo!
I think actually they have got it to play, so we could probably just play it for a couple of minutes. And just so, I think we've all got a mission to show as many people as possible this. So if we've got the audio as well, that would be great. No, I'll tell you what, it's in cinemas, right? It's in about 600 cinemas. It will be on Disney Plus shortly. And actually, if you go onto most social media sites now, you can find a similar version that we put out. I mean, sort of, I know we probably all feel similar here. Like sometimes you can lose a bit of hope when you see that degree of devastation. But actually, I mean, the marine environment can recover to an extraordinary degree. And I know you both witnessed it in place. I wonder if you could paint a little bit of a picture of what happens when it starts to come back.
What you need is champions that are willing to do the incredible, difficult work of creating protections. And it really requires a lot of players, from the people that fund conservation to the policymakers in government to the organizations, many of them underfunded, doing the tedious work of lobbying and informing. And I see Gabby Gomez here. And we've been working together in the Gulf of California, which is one of the richest areas in the planet for marine life, trying to create a marine protected area, a biosphere reserve called Dos Mares. And it's taken us, 8 years, Gabby?
It's been 8 years.
8 years of advocating and lobbying and all of it. And now we finally have a government in Mexico where the Minister of the Environment is excited, the President is being presented with the idea, and within a matter of months, of weeks, we might get a new protected area. And that's what it takes, but it takes years. And finally it comes out and you're like so tired, so exhausted, that it feels anticlimactic.
What's amazing about nature, I mean, I was a biologist, and I was actually, the work I was doing was population estimates, so we could estimate the maximum of sustainable yield. So how many animals can you kill, either in the fur trapping industry or big game hunting or sustainable, whatever it is, that how many can you kill without driving the population down? And I can tell you, because the greed of humans, we almost always got it wrong. The animals do not have a voice. The ecosystem doesn't have a voice. Humans have a voice. So we were managing the Bathurst caribou herd. It was 500,000 animals. We counted them, and then you fast forward 15 years later, there's 5,000 left. It's been a 99.8% decline in that population, and they're still fighting over who gets to kill the last 5,000. So now they're blaming the wolves. So let's go out and kill the wolves, because they must be the ones who are going to drive them to extinction. So now we have a multi-million-dollar kill program in Canada to kill wolves. So I mean, I got so disgruntled and disheartened, frustrated, that I knew I had to do something different. And I thought, if I could just tell these important stories and put them out there in front of the International Court of Public Opinion in little known magazines like National Geographic, now you have the chance to reach 100 million people at a time. And to know that 40 million people have seen your clip of bottom trawling, and many more people are going to see it. 2 billion people saw our footage of the starving polar bear that went viral around the world. And that's such important stuff. So the power of visual storytelling to bring people in the conversation, to understand the fact that if you just draw a line around ecosystems, whether it's on land or underwater, those ecosystems for 4 billion years have been forming through evolution, and it's their job to recover and reach equilibrium and balance. If we just get out of the way, nature will recover. And you have to put a value, a price tag on a fully functioning, healthy ecosystem to realize that there's really no value you can put on that. But if we just keep chopping at it and hammering it and crushing it and overfishing it, it's basically the whole ecosystem around the world's going to crumble, and obviously we're a part of that. And we just have to stop being so short-sighted. I feel every day we're living the movie Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio, where the asteroid or the comet's hurling towards Earth, which is climate change. And we're trying to think, well, is there value in that? How do I, make some money off that? How do I, but maybe, I hope that the asteroid hits my ex-wife's
the
house
ROI?
first. So just to realize what these systems are alive and healthy is all we need to focus on, and keep drawing lines on the map to protect them.
And I think, I mean, one of the good things, though, is that we have finally got to the point where in some places, and I don't want to pretend this is happening everywhere, but in some places the protection's now been in place for long enough in the ocean that you're actually seeing quite a spectacular recovery. And what is incredible is when you're telling stories, it's one thing to tell people, yes, there's hope, the ocean can bounce back. It's quite another thing to actually be able to show it. And one of the greatest moments working on that film was something I had absolutely no involvement in. A crew went out to a place called Papahanamawa-Kuakea, which is a collection of sort of very low-lying islands about 2,000 kilometers off Hawaii in the Pacific Ocean. These were areas that, like many islands in the world, have been really devastated. There have been rabbit farms put on them. The seals have been killed. They've been overfished like crazy over hundreds of years. But protection, particularly protection that have been guided by the native Hawaiian elders and the population and the fishing population, have been put in place for quite a number of years, and it got better and better and better. And our crew worked with sort of some of the people that have been involved in it right from the very start to go and film this, and the shots that came back are like absolute wonderland. Absolutely mind-blowing, and you cannot, it's the largest albatross colony in the world. There are turtles everywhere. There are yellowfin tuna. They're in schools of many, 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 many hundreds. The scale of bounce back is extraordinary, and it looks like nowhere you've ever seen before. But this is so large; it's 1.5 million square kilometers. It's not some tiny little reserve, which still can give you hope. It's actually happening on an ecosystem level scale, and then we have the advantage, which again, you two are both geniuses at, is to tell that story of hope in a way that lights people up, makes you realize what you could have if we give it a chance. And I just wonder if we could maybe touch on a couple of your greatest stories of hope. What place gives you hope in the ocean? What have you seen that?
You find hope wherever you find that community of people that are not going to give up on the protection. They're going to push against whatever to get it. And in a couple of places in the Pacific in the last few years, the Eastern Tropical Pacific, which is Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, and Ecuador, countries came together and they built the first interconnected series of marine protected areas to guarantee free migration to species like sharks and sea turtles that don't know the boundaries of protected areas. And now the vision is to expand that protection from Alaska all the way to Patagonia, and we are trying to play our part in Mexico. The largest marine national park in North America is called Revillagigedo, and I'm proud to say it's in Mexico. Since it was protected, it's 52 million square kilometers too. The tuna fishery has exploded outside the boundaries of the protected area because when it recovers, when it rebounds and the fish are big, they lay bigger eggs and more eggs. And the tuna fishery is having a boom, and we have to stop fighting with the fishermen to let them know that if we want to eat fish in the future, we need to create marine protected areas like these large ones that we're talking about.
I've been in the water with, leopard seals. We've been in the water with tiger sharks. But there's something very humbling about a 600-pound tuna that comes up to you, and it's doing about, 20 knots. And we had this huge tuna in the Revi group that Christina's talking about, that Gabby's father worked really hard on having that massive wind. Again, hundreds of thousands of kilometers of marine protected area that the fishermen are fishing their perimeter, having their best catches ever, because it's just a big nursery. It's a big breeding ground for these species. And then to jump into the middle of it and to have a fish with an eye that big, and it's
like
2.5.
The ocean went silent when it showed up.
It's
We're
like all animals,
what?
even the sharks got scared when this tuna showed up. It's like, you are a whale. And then a place is healthy when you have these big tuna that we all love to eat and it's just thriving in this ecosystem. Those are the moments that, again, you just drew a line around it on a map, must protect it. The fishermen are happy. The ecosystem's thriving. Tourism is thriving. It's just a win-win-win when you just protect big ecosystems.
And one of the extraordinary things in the ocean is a lot of ocean species, as they get older, they actually have more young. Not the same with a lot of species on the planet. So these bigger, older fish or the bigger, older lobsters inside protected areas can have huge numbers of offspring, which then, of course, drift in ocean currents and find themselves outside of a protected area. So that kind of that can sort of not just sustain within the protected area, it can have a spillover effect and sort of revive other parts of the ocean. We're going to go to Q&A in a second, but I just wanted, this is just a totally self-indulgent question, sorry. If there was one shot you'd want to, of each of yours, that you'd want to show people to give them hope about the ocean and inspire them to love it, what would you pick? I probably should have given you some warning to this.
I don't know if it's giving hope. I mean, because when I saw your shot, and I really do hope that you all go on Instagram and look at the devastation of bottom trawling. I've been dreaming about the horrendous threat that are these drift nets and these large gill nets in the ocean. And I was dreaming about making a photograph of an entangled whale that's dragging these big net, and in the net there's all these dead creatures. You know, I hope I never get to see that because it's horrifying, but you're just looking for moments when you can wake people up. And it's a horrible thing to see, but we just have to realize that the things that we thought were going to be happening 100 years from now are happening today. We already reached 1.5 degrees of temperature that we've been told so many times that, you know, that's the point of no return. We're there already. This was supposed to happen in 100 years. The science on this maximum sustainable yield, scientists just came out to say, oops, we got it wrong. You know, no wonder we've already lost 90% of the big fish in the ocean. The science is catching up too late, and we are so close to the point of no return. So I look for those horrific moments when you can wake people up so that you can remind them there's still hope if we do the work, if we do the hard things.
I think for me, when I get down and out, it's when I realize we're losing the war in protecting our planet. And then when I'm looking for hope, it's like this Dos Mares project. You know, you realize we are winning battles, and we just need to win a lot more battles to ultimately flip this and start winning the war in protecting our planet. And it's moments where I was in Tonga and I was free diving, and I was diving down about 15 meters deep. And there was this beautiful mother humpback, and she had these remoras around her waist, and she looked like a hula skirt. And then she had this, 10 or 15 foot calf tucked under her pec. And just to have her accept me and to be able to free dive down and slowly move towards her, and until I'm from me to you to this mother and a calf, wide angle lens, my lungs are burning, but I don't want to have to go up and get a breath because it's just one of the most beautiful things I've seen. And then when you think, it's just less than 100 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, we were still legally killing big swaths of whales around the world, the blue whales, the fin whales. We still have whaling coming out of Iceland and Norway and Japan. But to just think that here is a positive story, a news story where these whales were faced towards extinction, and now their numbers are bounced back to historic numbers. And again, it's that reminder when I'm looking in the eye of that mother humpback whale, and that if we just give them a chance, they're designed, ecosystems and their population are designed to recover if we just get out of their way. And I think that was just a really positive, tender moment for me. And we've had the same with, I was being attacked by a baby sperm whale, and it just wanted to play. So they had been diving down to 4,000 feet deep, and the mother's sleeping vertically in the water. I have a picture called Suspended Grace, with the mother's sleeping. She's got the squid tentacles hanging out of her mouth, and then the mother's so at peace, and we're free. Cristina and I are free diving down, looking in her eyes. She's just, when they sleep, they turn half their brain off at a time so they can rest. Not like us where we sleep. We slept 11 hours last night. Anyways, we're jet lagged. But they just turn half their brain off at a time, and then all of a sudden to see the look on her calf, who's again 15 feet long, look at us and come racing over to us and start to mouth me. And I'm inside its mouth with my camera, and its tongue is licking me, and it's trying to hit me with its...
It's like, get in here.
I'm like, get in here, Cristina. It's amazing. And then it's hitting me with its tail. But you're just, again, we were just killing them less than 50 years ago. And here they are again with now you're inside the mouth of a calf, and it wants to play with you. So the fact that these whales have forgotten and forgiven in their lifetime, these elders of these whale nations will remember what we've done to them. The fact that they've forgiven us and you're spending that quality time with them again is just a real testament that I'm going to give these animals a voice for the rest of my life till I die. That's all we're going to do.
Indulge me, I want to revise my answer. I dream of a shot where 11,000 artisanal fishermen in Mexico are cheering because this reserve has been created and their livelihoods will be preserved for the future. It took us a long time to convince the fishermen that this was good for them. They see conservation as the enemy. And it's the work of storytelling, which is invaluable in moving the needle. Without the stories, you cannot get people to come on board. And so I want to say thank you, Colin, for the stories you tell. They're so important. And for the opportunity for us to tell our stories too.
And I want to thank you both because you've been sharing the most incredible stories with us. So before we go to the Q&A, can we just have a lovely round of applause? So I don't doubt we've got lots of questions. We're semi-blinded by lights here, by the way. We can only see the front two rows. But
Please have questions.
There's people with mics coming around. If you
one
could
at the
just wait
front,
till you
yeah.
get the microphone, keep the questions relatively brief if you could, and we'll try and have about 15 minutes of questions.
Cool. I'll try and keep it brief. It might be difficult. But yeah, first I just want to say thank you for such a wonderful talk. I think everyone on this planet owes an awful lot to the three of you. So thank you for everything that you do. My question is to Colin, but maybe Cristina and Paul want to answer it as well. What's your hope for Ocean? Legislation passed. What can we all do to be part of it? The public, business leaders, and everyone else. And one bonus question, how do you get the bottom trawling shot?
Okay. So both of those, thank you, Will. So Ocean sort of became a project in two parts. We started making the film, which hopefully most of you have heard about now. It had its premiere last week in the UK. It was the largest documentary release in British history, certainly in the last
King
decade.
Charles was in attendance.
He was sitting kind of just over there for me. Yeah. But I think the big aim for that is it tells 100 years of the ocean, roughly David's lifespan. It's the sort of the narrative arc of it. And it starts with all this incredible discovery, what we've learned about the ocean. It then has these moments, which I'll come back to in a minute, about which really show the devastation of particularly bottom trawling and scallop dredging. And then it comes back and it ends with sort of 20 minutes of really showing this hope, including the Hawaiian story that I mentioned, but several examples of large and small restoration, all told through the communities that live there rather than David telling that part of the story. And so I guess my hope for it is that everybody that sees it realizes what an incredible, abundant ocean we can have, full of the sort of things that Paul and Cristina take images of, but also just our own coastal shores, wherever you happen to live, just thriving with life and the benefits that can bring to fishing communities. And in doing so, realize the power of protection. That if we protected, it gets roughly estimated at around a third of our coastal seas and seamounts, but a substantial amount of our coastal seas will get that back, and we'll also be able to still sustain, the fishing communities that we all imagine are often catching the fish, though in reality it's the industrial trawlers more often. So my hope is that it helps catalyze what has already been a movement for several decades and just opens up that space for change, particularly ahead of, there's a big conference happening in Nice in a few weeks' time. One conference never solves everything, but it's a stepping stone where people have the opportunity to comment and do that. In parallel, we made the book, which is all just narrative stories. It was about how do we just engage in the way that they were just describing about stories from David's filming career, stories of great ocean heroes, stories of weird and wonderful species, something a 14-year-old could pick up and just love the ocean. So I think that both projects try and achieve slightly different things, but they're all about revealing what's happening underneath the waves in different formats. You asked about the bottom trawling shot as well. There's two different sequences. They get sort of lumped together in the clip just for ease of putting a clip online. But one is trawling, which is sort of, it shows a beam and chain being dragged along the bottom. The other's dredging, which is a similar thing, but it's actually sort of like spiked claws going along. Different approaches, but similarly destructive things. Both were done in partnership with universities, one in the Mediterranean, one in the UK. So in the UK, since we're here, it was University of Plymouth. We worked with them, and they were doing a scientific dredge to be able to try and measure the impact. And we were able to put cameras down actually before they dredge, which is frankly what everybody should do before they stick it down. And in doing so, we put the cameras down first of all, and we actually found a community of sea fans down there, pink sea fans that nobody knew was there, which are now protected thanks to the university and the scientists behind them. But so we were then able to attach them and did a very short dredge to show what happened, and we've given all our footage to the scientists, and they're working on their papers and things to do that. So, it was nothing. We kind of hoped there'd be footage out there. The incredible thing is, it's been happening. I don't know how long it's been happening. Certainly as long as there's been film cameras, and nobody's ever filmed it before, really. There's been a few GoPro attempts, but the industry's never filmed it.
With a proper 8K camera.
No.
Never, no. So dangerous.
So hopefully this means nobody ever has to film it again, because we're giving away all of the footage from this. We've got a platform called Open Planet where we give away footage for free for non-profit use, and we're going to put it all on there so anybody who wants it can take it.
Can I elaborate on what the public can do? And, let's
please,
give
please,
them
please,
another
go for it.
hand. I mean, this is so epic. So once you've catalyzed, gotten a shot like this, what I have found over a long career in conservation is that advocacy really matters, and that politicians are looking for public pressure and public opinion. And it's a wonderful thing when the Minister of the Environment of any country calls you to say, we need you guys to come and help us rally people on social media to support a protected area or to oppose a destructive fishing practice. And what we all can do from our phone is just please like, comment, share, and sign petitions. I know it's a dread, but it really matters. We're going through this in Mexico right now. The Minister of the Environment needs to hear from people that there is immense support for this protected area, because the fishing lobby has a lot of money. They have a big PR agency, and they're putting their own spin on the story. You know, the noble fisherman, this is an important blah, 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 the economy. We need to counter with a bigger story, so participate. That's what we can do.
We really like to work. I mean, a lot of the work we do is we realize the power of the people is greater than the people in power. I mean, good luck, United States. So it's really what fuels us. Is when we do a story for National Geographic, it would take us 2 years, to come up with an assignment, and it would be in the pages of the magazine for a month and then gone forever, and you're on to your next assignment. There was no conservation follow-up, and it was through social media and realizing the engagement we can have on these issues. For example, the killing of these really beautiful rare sea wolves, these wolves that have a 90% seafood diet along the coastline of British Columbia where we live. Well, people could still go out and spend $2 on a license and go out and kill them. And so we thought, well, if we could just, galvanize, working with other conservation groups like Rainforest Alliance, if we could galvanize people to come in and buy up these hunting tenures. So now we're part of an ownership of a hunting tenure where these wolves live. And if people want to get a license to kill the wolf, they have to buy the license from us.
We sold our photos to buy the hunting licenses. So.
Yeah, so that's sort of this loop that we're a part of with our art, storytelling, science, conservation, that we just keep galvanizing large audiences to take action on these issues, and it really works. It's a lot of work and takes a lot of money.
So we got one right here.
Thank you. Next question.
Actually, he asked the question I also had about the dredging. Maybe, I don't know, do you have any thoughts about how we could, for example, change our diet to prevent dredging, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just quickly start, but jump in. So I think there's two parts to this question. The first is, it's often really hard to analyze what's behind what's being caught. I mean, in the example of scallop dredging, there's, you can get diver caught scallops, but again, making sure the traceability of this is a really hard thing to do. And there are some organizations that do it, some do it locally, some try and do it nationally and internationally. There are criticisms behind most of those schemes that I've seen. Yeah. I think I would personally say, try it if you can to find out where something's from, but generally the biggest thing we can all do now is to try and put pressure to get proper protection and traceability and that responsibility. I think some things do sit with all of us to take responsibility for, but I think it's wrong to look at them as mass industrial scale destruction of the ocean and then put it all back to each one of us. It's not to say we're powerless, but it's not just due to diet, it's due to really poor legislation that can be really easily changed. And I'd say that if there's one big thing you can do, it's do whatever feels right to you to help change that legislation. For some people, it's sign a petition. For some people, it's protest. For some people, it's share or comment or tell people. But I think if we make what's been invisible visible, because there's an outcome here that actually provides more fish for fishing communities, that provides more conservation, that is a win-win, this should be winnable. The fact it's not winnable, and we've not won it yet, is almost a surprise when you look at it. So I'd say that, yeah, let's get this one across the line.
I would say the easiest thing when choosing food from the ocean is to educate ourselves on a simple question: is this a carnivore or is this an herbivore? Because on land, it never occurs to us, would you eat a lion or a tiger? Or, of course not. It takes too much energy to build a carnivore. But in the ocean, we don't even question it. Tuna, salmon, snapper, grouper, I mean, these are all octopus, they're all carnivores. we shouldn't be eating these animals. But if we just know a handful of things that are herbivores, oysters, mussels, tilapia, scallops, I mean, all of these things are low in the food chain. Just know 5, and when you go to a restaurant, pick from those.
But if you do want to wreck your dinner, invite us, because everybody's like, well, what about this? It's Atlantic salmon. I'm like, well, no, it's farm. Well, tell me about it. Well, and then I did a story for Geographic. I had 600 contacts in 7 different countries. It took me 2 years to shoot this story about Atlantic salmon fish farming. And as a journalist, I mean, you peel back all those layers. So when people are like, what about farm salmon? I'm like, well, here we go. And then, so we, it's always a tough one.
And always ask your waiter, because I think it's the individual public pressure of just asking, where did this fish come from? Is it farmed? Is it wild? Does the chef know where it came from? If a lot of people ask, they are kind of like forced to say, okay, we need to disclose. And if we know more, I imagine a day when with our phones we're going to be able to point at a menu, and with the help of AI we will know. But until then.
Thank you. There's a gentleman here.
Good questions.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for all your work. One of the first acts by the new U.S. administration, and I struggle myself to use the T word so we know what we're talking about. One of the first acts of the new administration was to launch potentially a free-for-all on deep-sea mining, including, I think, in the sort of deep-sea zone between Hawaii and Mexico. And I just wondered what your thoughts are on the process and the extent to which that may metastasize, proliferate around the world as everybody just throws the rule book out the window and we have another problem.
That's a brilliant question and very timely. So I'm going to start the response with a little story. I'll get to the specific answer. So when I was researching that book, I spoke to a guy called Chad King who works for NOAA in the US, an administration, a part of the US, what's called National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. He's a deep sea explorer. So he had taken down a submersible. It was a remote submersible at the time. And he'd gone to this place called Davidson Seamount, which is just sort of in the Monterey Bay area, just about 2.5 kilometers down. And he just went for an explore. He didn't know what he was going to find, thought it might be muddy down there probably. Maybe they'd come across something interesting. And the lights of the sub started lighting up the floor. And they saw these things that looked like lots of white soccer balls, footballs. And they thought, what the hell is that? And they got a bit closer and they realized these were octopus. They were upside down octopus. And then they realized there wasn't just 10 of them. As they shined the beams, because it was really dark down there, as they shined the beams, there were thousands. And then they realized there's probably 10,000 of them. And octopus, you guys know this, they're largely solitary. They don't spend that much time together. What are 10,000 octopus clearly alive, clearly upside down, doing in the deep sea? And gradually, over the course of several dives and research, they realized these were all female. They were all brooding and giving birth, and they were along these sort of deep sea seams, so where slightly warmer water was coming up. And the theory is that they do that because it enables them to give birth faster, and that conserves their resources. The point of this story is this was an expert in deep sea exploration who had done many dives, and not only didn't know that was there, hadn't even occurred to anyone involved in deep sea exploration anywhere in the world that might even be a possibility for what was down there. Wow. And that was one tiny fragment of an area that covers 2/3 of our entire planet. The point being, if only a couple of years ago, with all the technology we have, nobody could even imagine that existed, much less what exists everywhere else, we probably shouldn't be mining the deep sea while we still have so little understanding as to what's down there.
Let me ask you another question, because I can't remember the stat exactly, but how much money goes into space exploration versus ocean exploration? It's some ridiculous number, like 10,000 to 1.
Yeah, exactly. Something I can't remember.
I'm super excited about moving to Mars. To have no air to
looks
breathe.
Looks lovely, doesn't it?
No water. It's amazing. Yeah. Just to be surrounded by a bunch of people and no nature, it's going to be fantastic.
I can think of a word that starts with F that goes right before the T word. One thing that I can think of is the role of us as storytellers. As I look at you out here, I realize that we're probably the least educated, least prepared people in this room. You guys are so much smarter, but we are storytellers. And somehow doing this work makes you slightly important to the point that you're given a microphone. And we try to use it to do this thing we call soft diplomacy. I got invited a month ago to a conference, and I was asked to keynote for President Macron and his Oceans Conference. And I used the opportunity to share the message of the organizations I work with. So we're trying to establish Dos Mares Biosphere Reserve in Mexico as the first one of a series of marine protected areas that include the island of Clarion in Mexico, which is next to the island of Clipperton, which is French. And if we can get these two countries to collaborate on a peace park and create a very large international marine peace park, we will at least put a boundary where they cannot just do the Trump thing. But I mean, those are the small actions. And the bigger story, I don't think people realize just how dangerous this is.
I don't know how we're doing for time, but let's have another question.
Yeah, we have time for 2 more questions.
2 more questions. Okay, thank you.
We haven't had a drink yet, so.
Yeah.
We've got a question right back here.
And Paul's already told me he's going to ruin the dinner that I'm about to go to with him, so.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much. Really, really inspirational talk. Paul, in particular, sorry, I know you can't see me. I've been following you for a while, actually, through. And what Cristina said is it really sung home in the fact that a lot of the time you just have no idea these things are going on, and then suddenly you get a wake-up moment. For me, it was, funnily enough, watching the Blackfish documentary, and then went down a black hole of Dolphin Project and found Paul through that. You mentioned Japan before. Well, I actually have 2 questions. One, and it's a bit basic, sorry. Is it very, very scary being under the water with killer whales? And number 2, on Japan, because I keep seeing all these horrendous imagery mainly from the Dolphin Project on Instagram with the cove, which I'm sure many people have seen. How important in terms of the whales and dolphins in that side of the world is Japan in kind of changing their ways? So the killer whale question and then Japan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. First of all, I mean, I was in university. I was, 17 years old, and I got involved in orca research. I was studying to become a marine biologist. I would hang out at the aquarium in Victoria, BC, and that was actually I met Tilikum when he was a teenager. And in fact, at that time, they were so poorly treated, and I was always watching them. They were sick. They lived in this open marina, and a girl, she was 17, living on my floor in university. She was working with the training program, and she fell in, and Tilikum killed her, playing with her, and she drowned. And then they shipped Tilikum down to the States, where Tilikum killed again. So these animals are under a lot of great stress. So Blackfish was a very powerful film. And so, yeah, I was nervous getting in the water the first time. Cristina and I were getting in the water with, we were getting in at night. It was almost pitch black, and there's 50 orcas in a feeding frenzy, and they're eating all these herring. And it was never you're never scared of an orca. They're so smart. I mean, I just want to die a cool death. I don't want to die in a car. If an orca kills you, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's not good for the orcas, but you're in the water and you're just like, orcas are all ripping around you. They're almost bumping into you, but they're echolocating you. And I was chasing this big male into the shallow water, and he's eating herring, and I'm right on his tail, and I'm kicking as hard as I can to keep up to him, and he just stops, puts out his big pecs, which are bigger than the hood of a car, and he just turns around 180 degrees and comes right up to my camera, and he just stops, and he's echolocating me. I mean, this animal's 12,000 pounds, and I'm just like, this is awesome. And it was, it's humbling, and it's really beautiful. But yeah, the scariest part was when you've got this a school of herring that's 10 times bigger than this building we're in, and it's just just below the surface, and all of a sudden you start to see this water column pump, and then you see a flash of white coming through, and it's humpbacks charging up through the water. They don't have echolocation, and they don't know you're there because you're blocked by all the herring. And all of a sudden, you're staring into the mouth of a humpback with his mouth wide open, and it's probably doing 15 miles an hour right at you. And then to be staring, you realize that's where we learned that humpbacks, when their mouths are wide open, their eyes are looking, they can look straight forward, and they're staring at you. And I'm a pilot, so we have something called an Immelman, which is where you can spin on a dime. But to see this 80,000-pound animal flick its peck ups and just spin on a dime to avoid you, and you feel guilty that you stopped its feeding, but that was the risk. You never ever worried about fear of an orca doing anything to you. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah,
on the next good questions.
a wild orca has never killed a human, so that's the moral of the story.
They're just big, cute dolphins.
In terms of the animals in captivity, it's not just dolphins, of course, it's orcas as well, and other marine mammals, belugas, even polar bears. And we have to think about how to turn the tap off on two fronts. You know, some of these animals are being caught for food, which is ridiculous because marine mammals, of course, accumulate so much mercury that nobody should be eating that stuff anyway. And advocacy is a really important thing. You know, we have been asked now by Paul Watson to share videos about restaurants that are still serving whale meat. It's upon us to, you know, find that restaurant and call on the chef and say, what the hell's the matter with you? But the other way that we turn the tap off is the entertainment industry, where these animals are being caught to entertain people. And we have to speak up against this. It's not just cruel, it's inhumane, it's horrific. So I'm really proud when it takes some time to find the right politician, because of course a lot of politicians are appointed and they don't know what they're doing, so they don't understand the problem. But every once in a while you get a good one. So today in Mexico, the Commissioner on Protected Areas banned the dolphinarium in Quintana Roo, which is huge. If he gets positive reinforcement, if we all say congratulations and thank you for doing this, he will ban the other ones as well. And so advocacy, participation, and just, you know, all of us speaking with the same voice to say we love planet Earth and we're concerned about it.
And I'll just quickly add to that, that if, you know, this happens to us, if you feel like you're going to take on every issue at once, I mean, I have to say it really sort of sucks to care in life, because once you start to care, it just gets exhausting and you start to see all the issues, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're kind of depressed and it's all overwhelming, and then you see what's going on with politicians right now and the dismantling of everything. It just seems too much. But the only thing that more important than taking a great image or is having a conservation win. It's what really fuels us, is winning small battles. So I'd say pick a battle that you are passionate about. It could be one dolphin in one dolphinarium. It could be an orca. It could be, and just get involved. Get involved in telling that story and sharing the news and sharing. And then it just feels really great to have that win. And all of a sudden the next win is going to be a lot easier because you just created a blueprint for success from that win. And all of a sudden it starts to snowball. And that's sort of what you're trying to do and ultimately you start to affect policy and laws, and that feels really good. So just the only antidote to sadness and frustration and depression right now is to get involved, is action. And just sit there inactive, feeling sorry for yourself and just getting depressed about the state of the planet is just... It's terrible. So yeah, just get active, feed your soul and get involved and have a win and inspire other people and start to mentor other people. We mentor a lot of young photographers, storytellers, conservationists to get involved. And often the best scientists, the people out there doing the most important work, are so left brain that they're terrible storytellers. So then get involved with them and become their right brain and their social media, the storytelling, the conservation storytelling, and they really help them along. And together you guys will be very, very powerful. So there's always a way to get involved.
I'll tell you what, the most joyous thing of the last sort of 2 years was working on that book. One of my jobs on it was to find all the people behind lots of marine protected areas and tell their individual stories, who started it. And you realize behind everything is somebody that just thought, you know what, I could make this better. And then they got other people to make it better. And once I've been through the similar sort of thing you have, when you've seen too many bad things. But suddenly spending a long time reading about incredible people and phoning them up and talking to them, you suddenly realize actually we're not a bad species at all. We're full of lots of incredible, inspirational people, and they just need that catalyst to get going, and that's quite a reinforcing, joyous thing.
And I'll wrap it up just by saying that it is what we're doing here tonight. It is building community around this common cause. And that's what we were doing with Sea Legacy, just saying, okay, we're good storytellers. We can shine a light on some of these heroes and some of these projects. That's what we're going to do, and just find them and try to help them in any way we can. But it is depressing at times. And I took a note from singing in choir. You get tired and you have to take a breath, but everybody else keeps singing, and that's the magic of community. So let's surround ourselves with other people who care, and let's know that when we win, we're winning together, and when we lose, we're picking each other up, and we're going to keep going.
That is a beautiful way to finish it. Everybody, please could you thank Paul and Cristina. Thank you.